Guitar players, if you want to stop feeling like a beginner, and if you want other people to respect your playing from the very first note that comes out of your amp, stop making the 5 beginner mistakes I'm going to show you in this video. They're very simple things to fix, and you'll sound a whole lot more pro when you do. Now, many beginners to lead guitar sound pretty wimpy when they get past the 12th fret and start playing licks on the top 2 strings, B and high E. The reason this happens, even when you have good vibrato and you can bend strings in tune and all that, is because you're just playing the notes themselves, like this. What's missing is this. This percussive picking hand rake is something you want to add to the front end of any note in the lick you want to emphasize. Watch the difference it makes. That adds a lot of power and thickness and a lot of maturity to your sound. The way you do picking hand rakes is you put the front of your palm on the lower in pitch strings like this, and then you just graze over the lower strings in a straight downward motion with the wrist to get to the actual note you're trying to play. So I want to play the E note, the 17th fret on the B string. And what I'm doing is I'm grazing over the lower strings is I'm playing the B string, obviously, and then the pick comes to rest on the high E string. Notice how it doesn't do any of this. It doesn't come away from the strings. It goes straight down. And another trick here is you want to have enough of the pick sticking out from inside of your grip so you don't accidentally mute the string you're trying to play, which obviously sounds bad. Now, it's actually a really simple technique. It just takes maybe a few minutes to maybe an hour of practicing to find the right hand position and all that. But once you do, you'll sound a lot more pro. The next beginner mistake that sounds really bad, especially when you're using lighter gauge strings or you're playing a 7-string guitar, although this applies to all guitar types and all string gauges, is pulling the low E string or low B string out of tune as you strum the lowest power chord, like this. Of course, I was exaggerating this, but you could hear the problem very clearly, I hope. What I was doing was I was pulling the low E string out of the way with the pick, and it took a split second for the string to get back in tune. It was becoming sharp, then it was going back in tune. Meanwhile, the 2 fretted notes of the chord were immediately in tune. If this is how you strum power chords, it's going to sound like a complete mess, especially when you're trying to record multiple guitar parts and have them all sound tight. What you want to do is you want to strum straight down to keep the chord stable and in tune, like this. Compare that sound with this. Hopefully this should make the point really clear. So pay attention to strumming straight down, you'll sound way better. Now the next mistake is really only a mistake if you do it all the time, because in and of itself it's really not that bad. But when many people do vibrato, they add vibrato instantly the moment they play the note they want to hear vibrato on, like this. And again, in and of itself, it's not really that bad, but a more dramatic way to do vibrato, which I learned from my good friend Tom Hess, is to play the note and wait for about half a second before you add vibrato, delaying it, like this. This sounds way more dramatic, and you sound more like a singer would sound when you play notes. And it sounds even better on bent notes, like this. Now, it takes a little bit of control to do it this way because you have to be careful to mute string noise around the bent note as you're waiting for vibrato, but when you get it right, man, it sounds awesome. Now, the next common beginner mistake is being too careless with palm muting. Now, palm muting itself is a pretty simple technique. You just rest the side of your palm on the strings near the bridge as you play rhythm guitar, and then you just strum away. The problem is, because palm muting is pretty simple and quick to learn, many people start to vary exactly how much pressure they're applying with their palm when they do palm muting, and exactly where they place their palm on the strings when they strum. This creates a lot of inconsistency in your sound and can even make you play out of tune if you're not careful. Watch. Hopefully you could hear the difference. So the solution to this is really simple. All you need to do is be clear on exactly the sound you're looking for when it's done right, when palm muting is done correctly, then find the hand position and the amount of pressure you need to achieve that exact sound, and listen carefully as you practice your rhythm guitar riffs to make sure you don't stray from that sound, that you're always playing with the exact level of palm muting you need, no more and no less. Now the next beginner mistake to avoid is about bending strings without wrapping the thumb around the neck of the guitar. I see many people try to bend strings by just extending their fingers like this. Meanwhile, their thumb is behind the neck pointing up at the ceiling. That's not what you want to do. There's two problems with this. One, it's very hard to bend the strings consistently in tune, but possibly even more importantly, you tend to get a lot of string noise when you bend strings like this. Watch. See this noise? It happens because the lower in pitch strings now got caught under the fingertip of the finger doing the bending. That's not what you want. So the solution is to wrap the thumb around the neck of the guitar and have the hand slanted slightly so that the rotation comes from the forearm, from the entire arm, and not from extending the fingers. So notice how this part of the hand where the index finger connects to the palm is the pivot point. This is where the hand rotates. The fingers do not extend. The whole hand rotates. Notice how this part is pressing against the bottom of the neck. That is the pivot point that I was talking about. So practice this bending rotational motion in front of a mirror so you can observe the motion and make sure you're doing it the right way. It won't take you too long to get this down, and you'll sound a whole lot more pro when you do. Finally, and this is my biggest pet peeve in this entire list, is when you use a metronome to build speed, do not play everything in just quarter notes like this. There's a bunch of problems with this. Like, for example, I'm already on the fastest tempo setting on this metronome, and if I want to get even a little bit faster, there's nowhere for me to go. This metronome is not fast enough to keep up with all my quarter notes. But even worse than that, if you're always playing one note per click on everything and you never train your internal metronome where you play some of the notes that are not falling on the click and you're still certain that they're in time, it becomes harder to keep your hands in sync and to actually play in time, ironically. See, if I slow down the metronome to a more reasonable tempo, like say 126, and just play a 16th note tremolo on one note like this, this is actually much faster than I was playing before, but more importantly, I am only needing to hear the first note of every group of four to make sure it lines up with the click, so that's all I'm listening for. The other three notes of every group of four, I'm just relying on my internal metronome to tell me if they're in time or not. And you never develop that skill if you only play one note per click on everything, and thus your timing kind of sucks. And you also tend to start to move your fingers a little bit before they need to move because you're anticipating when the next click is coming, and that disrupts your synchronization because the note never rings out its full length. And this inefficiency is really going to bite you in the ass when you start to increase speed. So find out the exact note values you're supposed to play. Is it 2 notes per click, 3, 4, 6, whatever the case is? Adjust the metronome tempo, practice the right note values, train your internal metronome. You'll sound way better and you'll improve much faster, guaranteed. And speaking of building your guitar speed, if you want some help with that, check out the link in the description of this video or go to the page on the screen right now. I'm going to show you a free 1-hour masterclass called Guitar Speed Formula. What it is a way to practice to build speed where you don't have to start slow and gradually increase the tempo a few BPM at a time, because if you already tried it, you know this way doesn't really work as well as everybody tells you that it does. If you want to know a different way that works a lot better and doesn't require a lot of practice time, check out that link, enter your email address, I'll send you the video for free. And while you're at it, make sure to avoid these guitar speed mistakes right here, because if you're making them while you practice, building speed becomes very hard or in some cases totally impossible. So watch this video next.